So again, for everybody joining us, first and foremost, just thank you. This is an investment of time, and we recognize that, and we hope that it proves valuable. And I'm certain actually it will because of kind of who we have as our guest here today. And we'll get more into introductions and such like that. But again, welcome everyone. This webinar is hosted by Rivet Work. Rivet is a labor operations platform, a real-time labor control center, if you will. We're not here to actually talk about though what the Rivet platform does or does not do. Here to talk about a lot of sort of what are some of the effects and how it changes companies, the culture, the operations, and quite frankly, the livelihood and just the lifestyle of the people that are experiencing this greater level of visibility and this greater level of planning that is easier to achieve when you have a tool fit to the task and it gets the team oriented and sort of moving in the same direction. So with that today, that's why we're here is we're talking to Kyle and Poynter, and we're going to talk specifically around this idea of proactive labor supervision. As you notice as we go through this today, we're going to blend that line between focusing on just the key supervision that we're planning out and forecasting, but also how the rest of labor, planning the journey workers, apprentices, the rest of our field teams, how that all goes together. But right now, key supervision is obviously in everyone's mind. It is, we like to joke, it's the new endangered species of the industry, if you will. And everyone, there's common talks of this labor shortage, if you will. And we'll talk about how Kyle and his team have gotten ahead of that in ways. But there is this aspect, though, of even though we're finding more ways to bring people into our industry and into the field, there's still this gap of that key supervision and that field supervision that has been 5, 10, 15, 20 years in experience of build. And that is something that we can't just hire our way out of. And so we see more groups being more and more intentional with that. And that's a lot of the key focus around our conversation today is how that key planning of supervision, when then combined with the rest of the field teams and the labor, gets groups kind of going to new lands and unlocking new areas of opportunity, as well as, quite frankly, better lifestyle when trying to do it. So, with all that being said, let's get into some introductions. I'll start with myself because we want to focus more on Kyle here today. But my name is Brian Witt. I run the revenue functions here for Rivet. Rivet is headquartered out of Detroit, Michigan. We have another office here in Kansas City where I'm coming to everyone from. And with that being said, the only reason I say that is I'll be trying to offer today, as I have a conversation with Kyle, Rivet has a unique opportunity to jump in and out of the four walls of many different contractors organizations around the country and around North America. And so we are able to hear and work with many groups on this labor planning idea. And thus we start to pick up on trends, specific data, as well as specific approaches or ideologies that we see work well in this space. And one of those groups that we have partnered with and worked with the last few years is Poynter. Poynter is out of Indianapolis, sheet metal organization. They are running over 1,000 people now in their organization. I think one of the largest sheet metal organizations in the country. So incredibly impressive organization that we've been fortunate enough to get to work with. And we'll talk more about them here. Specifically, Kyle Wilson is joining us here today. Now, Kyle is the general superintendent for Poynter, managing all the field. And I'm going to ask Kyle to kind of go more deep into his roles, responsibility, and what his kind of position at Poynter looks like. But the reason Kyle is here really is when an organization takes on a labor planning initiative, there are different key stakeholders or parties that need to not only be bought in, but also that can then evangelize and sort of drive a cultural shift in their organization. And Kyle is certainly one of those people, as is Poynter. So Poynter has this cultural shift that they have gone through and now mastered around this proactive labor planning. And as Kyle is directly leading those field teams, he's one of those key stakeholders. And he's a great example of someone that has adopted new tools really just so a new process and a new ideology can emerge. And the benefits of that are some of the things we're going to talk about here today and how they got there. So, with that, Kyle, would you mind just explain a little bit of how you got into the industry, what you've been doing at Poynter, what your role looks like today, and also a little bit of sort of what brought you to talking with me today on this fun Tuesday, June 30th?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I'm Kyle Wilson, General Field Superintendent here at Poynter. I started out in the trade as a pre-apprentice. It's our entry level position. I had no idea what the industry was. Got in through some family. It's now my father-in-law introduced me to the trade. Got me on here at Poynter back in 2008. and I've been very fortunate to spend my entire career here. So I worked my way up through the apprenticeship, started running work, and progressed as a foreman, and ultimately got the opportunity to take the role as general field superintendent for the entire company. So I've been in this role since October of 2020.
Perfect. Perfect. Now let's start actually on that note. And everyone, I want to first give you sort of a guide to how our conversation may weave and maneuver as we go through these different topics. But we want to talk a little bit about this key supervision and how far out certain groups are starting to plan that, why it makes a huge difference, and what strategies or different maneuvers or plays you can run to increase job level productivity and ultimately the labor margin on our projects when you have this proactive ability to see and plan and maneuver your labor as well as your key supervision the way that Poynter now can and does. But the way we're going to get there is first, I want to talk a little bit about where we were, as Kyle just mentioned, as he's coming up through these ranks and inheriting what we call the hot seat, the labor coordinator seat, maneuvering people across jobs, ultimately influencing and trying to kind of lead that labor aspect across projects. We're going to talk about where they were, talk a little bit take a minute to talk about as well this supervision in the industry today and truly what that's like and what groups are doing to try to retain, develop, plan, keep busy, but not burn out, so on and so forth. We'll get into some of the key supervision planning and how far out further with pursuit jobs and potential jobs we're looking at. We're going to get into the labor shortage, but how Pointer's actually begun to get this way of sort of planning for it further out, and it changed the culture in the field amongst the organization. We'll dive into exit strategies that last 20 to 40% of the job. And I'll share what we see as normally areas of huge risk, margin fade, losses, musical chairs of shuffling people around, but also where Kyle has actually crested and gone all the way full circle to where they're proactively planning their exit strategies and they have some cool secrets that I think they're willing to share with us. We'll talk about Pointer's kind of reserve force and how when we're planning ahead, we can keep certain personnel flexible for those last minute opportunities to bail other people who may not have planned as far ahead when they need additional labor and then a crunch. There's an opportunity to actually get some lucrative work there. And then we'll talk about developing supervision and some of the different mentorship programs and intentional planning of people and how we can build this next generation of supervision. So, for those that were taking notes there, that's about 6 or 7 different steps we're going to weave through today, but that's why we've got so much time here. So you guys don't just have to hear us talk about where we want to die in our last homes. So, with that all being said, Kyle, let's talk about as you were kind of taking on this position, and all of a sudden now I'm trying to schedule a lot of people, and I'm trying to plan many projects, many people across those projects. Uh, can you tell me a little about where you all were before Rivet and before the kind of, I'm not sure if promised land is the right word, but before we kind of reached where we are today? What tools were you guys using? What was the day to day life like? What kind of methods were you guys? What were some of the challenges you were facing? I think that will help people kind of understand where things may look like more familiar today if they haven't been there.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I took this position, the way I kept track of who was where was, I had a spreadsheet, right? The old Excel spreadsheet. I kind of inherited that of how it was being done previously, and I thought I made all the tweaks possible, to make it better. I had colors to help show, you know, crew rate blend. I had hometowns so I could help alleviate some of the travel expenses on the, with sending people throughout the area. And I had a book, just a literal notebook that I got at a store here, and I wrote down who was available, where they might need to go through pen, and that is how I started out. When I took over the field, it was about 500 out in the in the field area. So looking back to think that that's how I started managing it is kind of scary. That I had a notebook that I wrote things down, and I would lose my mind if I tried that today. So
It's and to your point, scale has also forced certain evolutions, and we see that a lot on our end too. You guys went from 500, now you're running over 900 to 1,000 in the field. Like that is happening across the industry and stuff we're going to talk more about as well. Um, but when you hit on the spreadsheets and the notebook, what we see is a lot of times we'll have someone that's very successful running jobs and then running groups of jobs or groups of people. And then all of a sudden we kind of promote them up, and then it's, hey, you're going to manage the workforce. And what tools do we give them to do that? And it's usually, well, we hope you rely on your wisdom and instincts, and then you'll figure it out. And that's why, for those that aren't aware, Rivet is a labor planning tool. Is we believe there should be a tool fit to this very unique, risky, and also hugely important task. And so I think that's, as Kyle mentions, what he was using versus where he is now. We commonly see a lot of it's my special spreadsheet, right?
Right.
Now, tell me, Kyle, though, about when you had your spreadsheet. How much of the team was able to kind of access that or see that? Were there PMs involved with labor because they see labor? What was the company leadership trying to pick up on? Because it was the spreadsheet that you were kind of, we call it spreadsheet hell, sort of
Yep.
trying to maneuver. How did that bleed out? How were you trying to keep everybody else up to speed on what was going on in the ever changing world?
So at the time that I had the spreadsheet, it was very secretive. I had access to it. Our operations manager had access to it, and our safety director would get in there just to kind of see who's on what jobs. If something came up, he could kind of search through there. Zero knowledge as far as the PMs did not know who was on the jobs, short of a phone call to the foreman. Maybe there was no way for them to visualize who is there, how many are there, what the plan was moving forward. That was 100% between myself and the foreman. They were, unaware of what was coming. Short of again talking with the foreman, there was no way for them to see if the foreman was asking for more help or if the foreman was planning to reduce their labor. It was all right on my computer, and that was the only people that were able to see it.
Well, if you give too many people access to it, it'll break. Like
Right.
it's too precious to have too many hands kind of in that pot without permissions and too many, again, just not a tool fit the task. So that's where we were, right? And then the communications aspect. I don't know if I've asked you, moving one person from one job to the next, how many phone calls or something like that does that incur?
Yeah, at the time that was, it could be two or three phone calls. I tried to do everything. I still do try to over communicate everything, but hey, I'm going to take this person and send them to this job. Just a heads up, friendly, letting them know what's going on, and maybe it's a duration set time like that. Then I would follow that up with multiple text messages from sharing the new foreman's information to the person, maybe a map pin drop, say, hey, give this person a call. And every single message was personalized to who I was sending it to. Please call, X, and I'd have the foreman's name in there. And I would do that for every single person I moved. And it was a very cumbersome process. And it's very time sensitive in our industry. I can't move people after hours because they have to have their tools and be able to reach out and things like that. So, I was trying to cram as much as I could into a small time and doing it as inefficiently as I think I could have, short of hand mailing them out. So
Might have been as efficient as your tools had to measure, but yeah,
yeah,
I always joke smoke signals come next, you know. But
yeah.
so with that, before we kind of go into the future state, how far out with the current method of trying to just also maintain, plug the holes, keep the things moving? How far out were you guys able to kind of look ahead? Would you say or plan?
I would say 2 to 4 weeks was and 4 would be on the generous side. I'm basing it off of 2 week look aheads that were largely driven by the foreman. The project managers didn't have a ton of input on the labor piece, short of going to them individually. So I would say I tried to live about 2 weeks ahead. And that was, to me, that was winning. Being 2 to 3 weeks ahead on the labor side of things, I thought we were doing okay for what I had. So
I and so that's, by the way, that is extremely normal for when we interact with organizations. It's day to day, maybe week to week, and maybe we're trying to get a 4 to 6 week look ahead where we have a sense of where people could be down the road.
right.
Tell me more about where you are today now. Let's kind of go into where things are going. How far out are you guys now looking today? Now that you kind of got this thing wrangled, you got this tool in place, where is your new process kind of taking you as far as looking further out?
Yeah, so being able to see what we do with jobs, start dates, labor needs, supervision forecasting. I know back in February, we were looking at jobs that are potentially starting end of Q3, beginning of Q4. So we're, potentially 9 months ahead on looking at the project teams. And, in the cycle of a job, that's that could be one project. It could be a couple projects to plug that time in between to make sure we have the right team for the project. But there are cases where we're looking months and months down the road at okay, what happens between now and then to make all these pieces align. But we're looking that far down, and no chance in the world we would have been doing that with an Excel sheet. So
Yeah. And for everybody listening in, I want to also clarify something very keen and clear here. We may be, and Kyle is like scheduling his field teams out as far as like apprentices or maybe some of these journey workers, etc. But the key supervision, we see groups, and Kyle, I'd love to hear, but start to go at least a job out, if not then, what is further out. How many today with your key supervision? Are you looking like one job out, two? How far out are you trying to now plan? Like this person could go from here to here. Is that 9 months? Are you looking a couple jobs ahead? What does that look like?
yeah, a lot of that is just so dependent on the duration of the job that we're looking at versus the job that it will be the next one up. And I didn't have that vision previously to look, okay, when this job's done, I was so focused on the front end of that project, I either didn't know or couldn't visualize what was coming down the road um, accurately. So I'd say we're looking at, okay, this job's great. What's next? And trying to time that out. And what does that look like on the back end of project one? Do we need to backfill a foreman to close some of that gap? Is there going to be a lull in time? What happens if this, project two doesn't start on time? So
Tell me more also about you guys are actually able to see now the potential jobs coming down the pipe, like the pending or pursuit or perspective, whatever you want to call it. Like maybe not even jobs awarded, but you're now able to actually start seeing what could be hitting and who could be.
yeah. Yeah, so we have our sales group puts we call it like a 90% lock, and those are prospective jobs. And we look at those once based on, the client and the feel of the project. If they think it's, a lock like that, we'll start forecasting out, okay, if this job hits like we anticipate it will, it'll start at this date. And we actually have a separate labor curve for the prospective jobs forecast, which helps us show the reality of what we know to be jobs, that are actually happening. And if everything goes the way we plan and we think it will, this is what it will actually look like. So it helps show that delta of this is what we know, this is what we think we have, and it helps plan for that as well.
Perfect. No, I appreciate it. Now, I like talking about the entire labor plan, but supervision is kind of one of our key items for today. So let's talk a little bit too about where you guys are, because I want everybody to understand too. We're talking about doing this in what is also a massive hotbed of construction. Indianapolis, the Southern Great Lakes region. This is, for those that are not aware, we've been tracking labor trends actually at Rivet across the nation. And where used to be the coasts for some very and don't get me wrong, there is an immense amount of work and always a need for great, skilled, experienced people. But what used to be higher levels of acute labor shortages or travelers needed, et cetera, in the coast has actually started to flip flop in the last 5+ years to now some of these small, traditionally somewhat smaller markets are seeing increased labor demand on these different power data center healthcare projects, et cetera. And it's causing overall a very, very acute labor shortage in these sort of southern Great Lakes, southern Midwest, some of these traditionally a little bit smaller markets. Can you talk a little bit about how, I mean, India is actually a great example of this is the labor demand there and what it looks like in the labor pool that used to be available versus how competitive it might be now.
Yeah, so when I came into the industry, obviously several years ago, there was we would have people on the bench. We are a union shop, and there would be people available. Maybe through the winter or jobs close out a little bit, but there was a labor force that was somewhat available there. And of late, it's just not there. There's people are staying busy, which is great for the industry, but it's just um, we're having to bring people in, whether they're new to the industry or fresh out of high school or college, and train them ourselves that way. A lot of the times, just to keep up with the labor demand, but the pool that of experienced help and uh, knowledgeable to the trade, I feel like has shrunk quite a bit. So.
And on top of that, then supervision. What do you guys think as far as again, I like to joke, it's almost the endangered species now. Everyone I talk to has the same reaction when it's like, well, if I could just have 10 more
Yeah.
skilled foremen, I could do twice the number of like, well, yeah, but I
Yeah.
mean, that has now become, I think, maybe the most, if not one of the most limiting factors or acute, the key logjam in a lot of group scale is this key supervision. And so, thus, driving this planning of this key supervision, not just one job out, multiple jobs out. What are you guys seeing as far as those key supervision and how you guys are viewing and identifying them and trying to retain or develop?
Yeah, and as far as, being tasked with, the field side, trying to, keep up with the rapid growth of the company, that was the number one topic between myself and our operations manager. I said, "The one thing I can't duplicate is seat time, the experience. I can't accelerate 5 years experience on a foreman. I can't make them know more today by, reading a book about it. It's just one of those things that, I've been there, I've done that, I've seen that, I know how to react. This seasoned veteran, you can't create that. You have to let that come to be. So, one of the ways that we've done that is by putting site superintendents out that are in charge of the projects, or in some cases, several projects, and they help oversee multiple projects with less experienced foremen. Gives an opportunity to stretch their skill set and knowledge base across multiple jobs, while also giving an opportunity for a younger or newer foreman to kind of spread their wings a little bit and begin to learn with the steady presence of someone able to help them at any time.
So and I think that's key right there because you guys are now planning ahead and you've gotten out of what I like to call kind of the reactive, almost firefighting aspect of labor planning because you can look further out. It's not just now who's going to be available or who's under or over their individual capacity. It's now I'm going to intentionally put this experienced person with this developing person, and you guys are, it sounds like, are sort of going in that direction.
Yeah, and that's part of our mentorship program where, we pair, um, again, seasoned foremen with either new foremen or prospective foremen, and that allows us to help get them some experience live, in real time, on the job. They get the chance to make some of those decisions, do some of the coordination and things like that, but they've always got someone there to help them out a little bit. So, um, it's a to me, it's a great way to help grow the industry and to help speed up the experience part of it. So,
Now, with that too, tell me more as we're talking about kind of this looking further ahead. You guys are now forecast a lot more projects. You guys also, on top of this labor sort of shortage, you and I were talking, it might not feel like you necessarily have a labor shortage. I want you to, how has forecasting more of these jobs impacted also? You guys have a busy season you said each
yeah.
summer. What is different this summer and how has forecasting kind of helped us attack this seasonality ramp up a little bit differently?
Yeah, so our busiest time, we stay busy year round for sure, but we definitely feel peak in summertime, kind of the mid-May to early August timeframe with the pickup in addition of schoolwork. We have the summer shutdowns, those types of things that are scheduled. Some of it's holiday shutdown work at factories, things like that. But for the first time since I've been in this seat, we were actually forecasting that out in the end of February, beginning of March, looking at jobs that we knew were coming. We looked at scale. We used the labor curves to see how many people to make sure we were pairing the right foreman for their skill set. Not overwhelming somebody as far as putting the wrong foreman on a project that's going to require more labor than maybe they're comfortable managing at this time. But we were able to forecast that out and started assigning foremen to projects back in the beginning of March. And that was huge to be able to get a jump on we got into some of them on spring break and had the opportunity to really look ahead at what are you going to need as far as a crew, what challenges are we going to face with this job, right down to the fact of even helping our shop pull ahead on some of that, looking at, hey, the field's going to get overwhelmed, the shop's going to get overwhelmed as well. So we started it being able to get those foremen engaged early on in the project, allowed us the opportunity to look ahead, measure ahead on it, get orders put together and get our shop to fab ahead in order to keep up on their side of things. So we did a lot of work with I'd say the same amount of people just by planning and knowing what was coming and adjusting and adapting to it throughout the rest of the work season.
I want to go into two different things based. You covered some key pieces there. One, number one, I want to talk about what that feels like in the office too, and in the company at large, right? But two, I also want to talk about that fab shop piece. That's a huge thing in the industry, and I'd love for you to share more with people of like what your all's fab shop looks like. I think it's one of Pointer's superpowers, but the fact that you guys are also leveraging labor planning and how the fab shop stays on top of it, it stays an even bigger advantage. I think is key. So first, though, you're going into what is normally the craziest time of the year,
Yeah.
and in the past, people may have been able to feel that. But tell me more about now, just the culture across the company, the office. What is it? What feels different? How does it feel now compared to in the past when it was kind of the season of chaos?
Yeah, I feel like, just the, being able to staff it and look ahead that far, the confidence that we're gonna get the job done. My goal going into this summer, which, is a first for me, was I want all that chaos and noise. I don't want anyone to know what's going on, how busy we are, outside of myself handling the field and, the guys that help me in the field that way. I didn't want our project managers getting phone calls. Hey, you're behind. You don't have enough people. You're missing the boat here. And we've been able to maintain that and kind of lead the curve there and actually pick up extra scope of work due to that. So it's been huge to be able to have the project managers kind of see some of their shift in confidence, knowing we've got this, and our jobs are going fine, and they're actively pursuing added scope on some of these jobs, and just answering, I'd say answering with more confidence of we'll get it. We got this under control, and it's a good feeling to know that we're in that spot right now. So
That's there's and this is probably bigger in my mind than maybe in others, but I think there is a huge piece in any organization of and my history in the military, like you want to inspire confidence among your people, and it
yeah,
changes the way they go about attacking a problem or solving doing their duty and their job. And I love that about what you guys are seeing and experiencing because it is a big deal. You can tell, I think, when people are confident and they attack this next task, job, project, whatever it might be. And then you also mentioned there, you guys are picking up work because you've kind of been able to, you have more maneuverability, it sounds like. And you guys are
right.
now picking up work more late stage that others are um, kind of having to open up to.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had a few projects actually this summer where, we're working closely with mechanicals, and it come right down to it, and they're looking to us going, "Hey, we're in a spot. We don't really have anybody to put on this task." What would usually be, maybe a composite task where we work hand in hand with that contractor, and now they're coming to us saying, "Can you guys help us with this? We're in a spot, and we're going to miss the deadlines. Are you able to help?" And our teams are stepping up to the plate and say, "Absolutely. What do you need?" And we've seen added scope with that on multiple projects this summer, and that's something that we were in an okay spot last summer, but the year previous, summer of probably 24, not a chance that I would have felt comfortable with that. I felt overwhelmed, but I was living in the moment. I wasn't looking down the road at, hey, what's coming in August or September? Where are we going next? So being able to look ahead and know that we have a plan in place and being able to pivot in real time that way, and adjusting, making small corrections rather than just trying to put out fires. It's been huge to be able to have that the availability to help other contractors when it's needed.
Tell me more about the plan. You and I keep referencing the plan. And I think you and I have a mental picture that probably looks rather similar because, that's why we work together. But talk a little bit for me, if you don't mind, about who all has visibility, even if it's more limited visibility. Maybe it's look but don't touch, whatever it might be. But who all is now kind of involved or can see some pieces of the plan compared to earlier when we were talking about, hey, it's my spreadsheet and I kind of got to protect it.
Yeah.
Now, what does that plan look like? Who all's getting able to like kind of partake or benefit from that?
So, I mean, honestly, the all the project managers are have full access to see their projects, the labor plans, the curves, the dashboard. Everybody's is tailored a little bit differently, but each project manager can see labor requests coming in, being filled, what the forecast looks like for their project, when the ramp ups are coming. Our safety personnel, our entire safety team has access to this, so they can see, the hot spots, if you will, the larger projects that we have. The sales department sees parts of it; they can kind of see where we're at with things that way. So, it would say most of the company, as far as the office staff is concerned, has that visualization, and then obviously the foremen have their piece where their dashboard has each individual project assigned to them. So.
Yeah, we gotta keep Zach from just running wild on that business development side, so I got a jab at him, well, he can't retort. He's gonna pop in the back of your office here in a second, but, so we this is thank you. We kinda talking about the culture, I'm looping us all the way back to you mentioned the fab shop now. I would love for you, before we get too deep into this, the reason I wanna hit on this is we are hearing more sheet metal shop. You guys have traditionally been leading the industry in manufacturing and in fabrication. We see more electrical contractors trying to learn how manufacturing and prefabrication and everything have happened on the mechanical side. And we see more mechanical shops trying to learn how electrical shops have been usually forecasting, planning, and doing some of their labor aspects.
Yeah.
Would you mind sharing with everybody first, as we get into this fabrication and prefab sort of topic, what is Pointer's prefab shop look like? Scale, people, like how much of your guys' jobs are you trying to typically move through there? Tell them a little bit about what prefab means to Pointer today.
So, as far as the scale of the shop, I know it's one of the premier shops in the country. It's easy for me to say that. I have a biased opinion, but we've had large groups come through here, and it is a truly impressive facility. We have a wide variety of skill sets, from polished specialty metals down to just typical ventilation duct. So we're able to produce uh, quite a bit out of there on a regular basis. The facility itself is state of the art with machinery, any technology available. We're always trying to stay on the cutting edge of that. So, um, our shop can push, upwards 300,000 pounds a week out. So, it's unreal what they're able to produce. But, that being said, with planning for the labor coming, um, they're cranking that out every single week. So when we know we're going to have that spike, um, just being able to stay ahead of that and not overwhelm the demand, we were able to start putting together orders ahead of time and say, hey, we're going to need all this, and it helped alleviate overtime. It helped keep some of the stress down of purchasing material. Just kind of loop it back into the daily flow a little bit better, and help things streamline the process, and we're ready to hit the ground running. And, I would, comfortable saying even the shop did not feel the main, stress like you normally would that week after Memorial Day of, we got all these jobs going, we got to get stuff out there. They were ready to go. They had trucks staged, ready to rock, and, took off. Didn't miss a beat.
The whole team is getting more visibility into what's kind of coming across the board, more awareness. I mean, your guys' shop. I've worked with hundreds of contractors on this. Got to go to a lot of visits and walk the shop floor. Your guys' shop is incredible. Running 50 to 100 plus people out of it typically. I mean, so one of the things that I want to tie back for maybe some of the people joining is I got a lot of other groups that we work with that we've come across in the past and maybe we don't work with where the shop is definitely an asset, but that asset also needs to be staffed or labor or scheduled the same as some of these projects. And when they get really busy, they actually have to hamstring themselves by taking people out of the shop, getting them out in the field to catch up when they get underwater. And then that asset now is turned into a detriment. And now the shop starts to get behind. And you guys are saying it from the other side. You've looked ahead and you know when to proactively staff the projects and the shop to keep that prefabrication edge and that benefit on their productivity.
Yeah, and it helps keep overall labor numbers, steady. I don't wanna say down, but it keeps it steady, where you would see massive influx of, "We need more help in the summer." We did need more help, but with better planning, we were able to minimize the short-term orders, and, again, keeping the shop at that steady number. They're fabbing stuff for June back in April, right? And that was huge to be able to have that, to know it was coming, and to understand what that looked like, and to get that out in front of the shop foreman so he could go, okay, this is what I have to have done. What does it take to get there? And it helped, to me, it helped create a more clear path to success that way, to be ready for all that work.
Uh, this is one of my favorite topics that we're going to jump into here. I'm going to set the stage a little bit around this exit strategy, the ends of projects. And the reason why we at Rivet are so passionate about this exit strategy or the end of the project. For everybody listening in on the electrical side, think the last 20 to 30% of the job. On the kind of mechanical side, think more of the last like 20 to 40% of the job. But
Right.
we're talking about that closing chapter of the project when the reason we talk about it, the reason I'm excited to jump in with you is that's usually where we see MEP contractors either bleed out the margin or really exploit it and bring home some points. And so
Right.
what we normally see, and this, I'm going to describe this because I think you guys have such a unique approach that I'm excited for you to share, is normally at the end of that job, when people are not proactively labor planning, they can't see the curve. The PM cannot project how the labor was supposed to turn down because, rightfully so, the field teams are, we're going to get it done. It's going to take what it's going to take, and we're going to get there. But
Right.
we slowly have people staying on those jobs a little bit too long sometimes. People start to kind of burn out, and we see that labor margin erode away. And the PM gets to find that out on the next monthly whip statement, and it's all reactive. It's too late. We can't go back and get additional labor change events at the proper cost. It is a terribly important zone in that exit strategy. And so we see more contractors sort of take on these cultures of exit strategies and putting a lot of focus on the end of that job to knock it out versus kind of like coast through it, so on and so
Right.
forth. So, with all that being said, this exit strategy, I would love, can you talk to me a little bit about how you guys approach this exit strategy and sort of some of the different practices you guys have on knocking jobs out and making sure that you're kind of executing against that?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of success somewhat recently of switching, even, come to the point of that last 20%, switching foreman. In some cases, we'll pull the lead foreman or the site superintendent off the project, and someone that's, familiarized with the job will take it from there. Or, like I said, we just bring in an entire new foreman and maybe some fresh faces to the job where, um, they don't know the problems the job has had. They don't know, um, some of the baggage, I guess, that you get used to on longer projects, and you get to that last 20%, and the foreman that's been there day after day starts to, get complacent with, "Yeah, I gotta get to that, I gotta get to that." If you bring in a new team, new faces, and a different perspective to it, they have a whole new attack mode to it, and they, go in and clean things up if needed, make sure everything's completed the right way, and again, they don't have the baggage or the history of the job. It's brand new to them, and they're ready to go in and get it done and get out of there. And we've had a lot of great success doing that on multiple projects.
And this is wild to me because, and for everybody listening, this is an intention. The key here is it's an intentional switch of the supervision and sometimes the crew to make it. You mentioned to me, hey, that I'll get that done later versus that should have already been done. I'm just going to go do it. But what we normally see, and when you and I were first talking about this, I was kind of like, whoa, 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 like what the hell? Because we normally see when groups are reacting and they are not intentional about this, what can happen is they'll play musical chairs at the end of a job. And this job's most of the way through. We're knocking it out. I think we're good. Hey, there's a fire over here, and only this key supervisor or this key person on this job can, I think, knock it out. So they'll pull
Right.
people off the job too soon and actually cause turnover or loss of learning and a loss in productivity, but you guys are planning for this. And so it
Yeah.
almost the opposite effect. I mean, that's
Yeah, it's been great on several large projects to do it that way, to look ahead and say, okay, when we get to, whether it's a certain point in the schedule or a feel of the project, maybe it's driven by the number of people scheduled to the project and what we think the forecast looks like. We say, okay, this person can handle it from here, and we'll pull this, you know the lead superintendent off that project. They're going to move off to another one. Their forte is getting things off and running in the right direction. This thing's coming to a close, which is a huge part of the project. But we do have foremen that their forte is the closeout part, and like the closer pitchers, right? They come in and they make sure everything's right where it needs to be. They tighten things up. They cut down the crew. It's a brand new perspective to the project, and we finish strong that way.
I like that. The idea like the closer of a job, like just like yeah, a pitcher. I mean, that's the your anchor that there's a different mentality, different skill set that usually excels in that. But now, okay, so we're talking about maybe at a more crucial point in the job. How do you guys avoid losing productivity because they don't know the history of the job? Are you guys doing an overlap, or how are you making sure that you're not losing too much of the productivity or insights or wisdom from the project previously?
Right. So typically, what I've done is I'll keep a few key players on the project that because there is that knowledge loss, right? I don't know where that room is. I don't know how to get there. Who do I contact for this? So I try to keep someone, depending on the scale of the project, a few people from the team that maybe have been in the day to day to stay there and help alleviate some of that confusion. And the new foreman or the finished foreman can help lean on them and say, "Hey, where are we at here?" As far as overlap with like, what I would consider site turnover, where we might have the site superintendent and the person that's now taking the project over, I like to give them 1 to 2 days, a quick high level, this is where we're at, and then get the site superintendent off the project, let the new person take over, soak it in, study drawings, figure out where things are at, walk the project and mark up a set of drawings on their own. But I don't want that bleed through there. I don't want any of the baggage or the history of the project to get passed on. So when we do that, if we make a change like that, or we have a team that comes in to help close out the project, I like to keep it isolated and say, okay, it's yours now. Take it home, and get the lead that was there for the year and a half duration, get them off and out of there so that there isn't that bleed through.
Yeah, I like that. And then again, just that it's not weeks necessarily for those that are listening,
Right.
it's days of overlap. So that way there can't be too much of that. Well, we don't want to go to the third floor because it always is drought, whatever.
Right.
I like that. Now, you guys are bringing these closers in, right? Kind of knocking out this job, and you're kind of planning for this, which again I think is so crucial. It's not a reaction; it becomes a strength, and it's now intended and planned. But we've talked as well, and I've talked to others about this sort of. We've got burnout in the way of somebody working too much. They're on a data center job, and they're just absolutely losing their hair and just going nuts. But at the same time, there's this burnout I think that you and I have spoken of I am getting on some of these large scale projects and I'm just doing the same task again,
Right.
again, and again, or the same floor for 100 floors. Like that can be another type of burnout. What are you guys seeing on that front? Are you guys trying to combat that in any ways?
Yeah, I like to, we change up crews, change up tasks. Not real frequently, but again, you get to that point where this is the way we've always done it, right? You think this way is going to work better because that's how it worked previously, and I think at some point in that process, you begin to quit looking for ways to make it a more efficient process. You just know this is how you do it, and it's how you've done it for the last 18 months. Why change it now? So changing up crews or maybe pairing individuals differently, or even if it's putting the same crews on different tasks and kind of rotating through, hey, you're going to do this now. It's got a different feel to it. Kind of brings a little bit of livelihood to the project. We're like, okay, good. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm moving on to this. It helps keep everybody engaged and not to get so complacent with the day to day tasks and just repetitive over and over for whatever that period of time is.
Again, I think this is huge because you guys are intentionally, I'm not going to say turning over, but you're intentionally rotating for fresh perspective, fresh morale, kind of like going in and looking at the situation or the problem or the work in a different angle. As opposed to, again, what we'll see is people might be doing that, but because it's not intentional, it actually is this musical chairs and they're having productivity
Right.
losses, but you guys are actually gaining productivity wins. So, again, I think that's extremely insightful. And I'm glad we got to talk about that. I need to also hit on as we talk, we just started to mention this sort of factory effect and this avoiding that burnout or the same redundancies, et cetera. But this leads us into trying to develop diverse, experienced individual contributors and then eventually diverse and experienced supervision. And I'd love to bend your ear on how you guys are looking at that from maybe the actual just, hey, the people on our field teams, how are we making sure that they stay diverse and get a breadth of experiences and jobs, as well
Right.
as hey, our supervision now have had a breadth of experiences. Um, how are you guys approaching that? Are you guys viewing that in a certain way? What are you guys doing to attack that problem?
Yeah, so, as far as pairing projects and foreman, I think that's probably the number one thing in my field is making sure I have the right fit for that person. Sometimes it's a little bit of a learning curve or a stretch, but, recently, putting a foreman that's had great success or is super organized on a high scale pharmaceutical project where things are gonna be a little bit different, and it's out of their realm of what they're used to, but based on their skill set, no, I think it'll be a great fit. That's an opportunity for us to grow that side of things and to let them see a different scope and a different side of the industry, as well as continue to spread that knowledge of what these projects look like throughout the team that way. So that's part of the way we spread that out. Sometimes we'll pair. If we've got a foreman that's a little more high strung, maybe a good way to put it, and someone that's a little more reserved, like, hey, let's pair those two together. Let's let that blend and let them rub off on each other a little bit, and they'll both pick up something new or some new traits, and they'll both be better foremen for it. So
Yep. We have a lot of with a lot of scenarios where we've seen, hey, this is my racks guy, this is my ductwork guy, this is whatever, and like he just goes and does that. We just have him do
right,
that, and it's good in the moment, but in the long run, we pay the price. And I
right.
think I'm excited to hear that you guys are looking at it from a long term aspect of the intentional maneuvering creates a stronger workforce down the road. I'm excited to see where that takes you guys. I think it's incredible. You guys mentioned mentorship programs, such like that, about kind of how you're trying to bring people in, make them pointer people, and then like develop them long term. Anything you care to share more on that topic of kind of these mentorship programs?
Yeah, so we've done that for several years now. I actually was part of the program coming up through as a mentor or being mentored, I should say. We look for strong apprentices, people that are eager to learn, wanting to take on more, maybe not quite ready to be on their own yet as far as running work, or whether we're not comfortable or they're not comfortable with that. We have a one of our senior project managers we'll run through a course. We all sit down and go through what do we want to see out of this particular round, and we try to bring in 10 to 15 men and women and pair into that group, and kind of hone in their skill set a little bit. This is we do deep dives into submittals. We ask questions like a classroom setting, do site walks, things like that to get them engaged, and it's a really good opportunity for a different perspective coming from a project manager and showing them that side of the world and how it helps the foreman, as well as gives us an opportunity to kind of vet that out and, see well, this person maybe didn't think, they thought they wanted this opportunity, but now after a little bit more training, they're not so sure. Or maybe we've had in other instances, people really shine and catch on quick and helps better identify like, I think we're missing something here. We've got somebody that's really ready to take off running. So um, that's the classroom side of it, and we've also done those up and coming younger foremen, as I'd mentioned before, pairing them with seasoned veterans where they're ready to go. They know what they're doing, but maybe they need a little more reassurance from time to time, and that gives them the confidence and the ability to make decisions in live time without hesitating or making large mistakes on projects. But it also gives them an opportunity to grow with the close supervision of somebody that's there to help them learn and let them progress as they need to.
Almost like a pointer university. You
Yeah,
got yeah,
yeah.
like internal. I like that. Now, so you guys have programs like that. We've got this, we're here talking about supervision and this endangered species and how we're trying to kind of protect and preserve them for longer, develop the next ones. Um, who all was involved? w- Groups that are calling into this, right? They could be
Right.
project managers. We could have other labor leaders. We could have company leadership. As you guys underwent this evolution and this change in labor planning explicitly and the supervision,
Right.
obviously as well, what was the leadership team's involvement? What was kind of how did it go? Were there like milestones that you remember of like kind of where you guys started and how you got more and more towards this? Okay, now we're on top of planning.
So we started, it's been, I don't recall, 2, 3 years ago, we started having an operations team meeting. We have our VDC manager. our corporate safety director, myself, our operations director, our president of the company sits in on it, and one of our project controls, the manager of project controls, sits in on that, and that's kind of more of our pre-con group that helps out there. And we look at the jobs that are coming 4 to 8 weeks out. We take a glimpse at jobs that are starting. We kind of talk as a group, review scope, size, hours, things like that. Make sure everybody's comfortable with it. Do we need more safety personnel? Make sure drawings are on par with where they need to be for the project schedule. That was a pivotal moment, I think, in the start of planning further ahead, where before I was getting, hey, I need a foreman next week. And that was about as far as I was looking ahead. And this was, through email or somebody walking through the door going, I need a foreman. I got a job starts. What you got? And this gives us an opportunity to look at a broad range of projects. We get to decide, how far out we want to go, um, and as a group, make sure we're making a collective decision that we got the right team in process and kind of bounce ideas off each other. I'd say we're all very headstrong, but none of us are too proud to take advice from someone else or suggestions. I hadn't thought of that. That's a great idea. So just that team effort and the collaborative thinking in that operations meeting that we have weekly has been a huge step forward in planning and making sure we got the right teams.
I love that it's the operations meeting, and the meeting is now around like the vision of the future,
Yeah.
opposed to I don't know if you guys have ever had. I come across a lot the dreaded labor meeting. And the labor meeting is usually weekly, usually like a Wednesday, maybe a Thursday, something like that. And
Right.
that's more like, where the hell is everybody? Do you need guys? Can he have this guy? And
Yeah.
like this, yeah, it sounds like those are very different meetings for you guys.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I just kind of was born into the way I wanted to do things that way. I was, very fortunate, and the team ahead of me let me develop things the way I wanted, and have had great mentors in helping me do that. Um, but it's been, we went from feeling like I was always a couple steps behind to now, obviously working 4 to 8 weeks ahead on the leadership team. And once we get the leadership team in part, it's okay. We got the top pieces assembled. Now we need a team. So um, it's a lot different meeting. It's a lot less stressful these days than it was, and it affords us the opportunity to assign projects weeks out and make sure we're hitting them at the right time, and we're not playing catch up right out of the gate. So.
Yeah. I think that's actually kind of where I'd like to land this plane. Unless, is there anything other that you want to dive into before I start to kind of bring us back to the ground here?
No, I think, just we've hit on everything that I wanted to touch on, keeping crews diverse as far as skill sets, and introducing people that haven't done, I know we talked previously, helicopter lifts. I like to have one or two that have done it and a few that haven't, and just continue to be open minded. As you'd mentioned, I have this team that can do helicopter picks, right? And they're great at it. But being open-minded in the fact that that means I can only do one at a time, right? Whereas the way we've been doing it here the last 2, 3 years really gives us the opportunity to have more people with more experience and a much more diversified workforce as far as the knowledge base. So,
And that's where I was, for everybody that's listening in, like, how is Kyle doing this? What are they looking at? What tool are they using? Selfless plug, it's Rivet, right? It is the labor planning tool, this labor control center where you can identify your helicopter pick guys, and you can identify
right,
people who have experience in different things. And you can see those people planned out into the future across those different jobs. And you can decide who all from the team does or doesn't need visibility, but also could have visibility now. And then what the company looks like. So, we mentioned your leadership team is backing these changes in this culture of planning as well. And it's because it also has massive impacts at a company or portfolio level, not just on an individual or just on a
right.
project level. And so, with all that being said, I think as we wrap this, and I'm going to pass it for some questions if we got them. But first, would you just, Kyle, tell me, you and I are sitting at a, and this is a, I'm throwing you a curveball here, but you and I are sitting at a bar, right? And I'm a contractor, MEP contractor who does not have Rivet. I do not have a labor planning deal. Would you just tell me, what would it be like if you had to go back? Would you go back to the way it was? What is it like now versus then? What are you telling me?
The way I would compare how it feels now versus then is, I feel like I'm, much more prepared with the workforce and the work coming. I'm living 3 to 6 months ahead. I'd mentioned before that where there was some concern about the summer projects. I said, we had that figured out in March and April. We had a very, I had a team sit down with me and we had a very strategic plan of who was going where. Having the confidence to say that's handled. What's next? And looking at those and dissecting the problems, and being able to see what's coming rather than being very reactive to it. It feels like I'm planning out and then making minor adjustments rather than just, nonstop chaos and spinning my wheels day after day after day. So it's a much more efficient way of doing things. And it's really allowed me to look at different aspects of ways to improve across the board that I wouldn't have otherwise even had the opportunity to dream of trying to attack. So it's afforded me the opportunity to do that as well. So
Well, it's always a pleasure, and again, I really appreciate it. I'm going to see Matt from our team. We'll see if we have any questions that came to during the conversation here.